So, Dr. Pieczenik, what do you think is really going on here?
Well, Alex, you and I have been together for a long time. And one of the things that was so obvious and people really didn't get it was when I got onto your show and I said several months ago that Hillary and Bill had effected a civil coup. That wasn't, ex cathedra. That was not ad hominem. That was a very definite problem that we in the intelligence community, the selective part of the intelligence community, much of whom were involved, were military people. I'm not going to the specifics. And I warned you we would do a counter coup. We did. It was done through emails, through Julian Assange. I will not name individuals. I've always said Julian Assange was really a hero for America. I can guarantee that Russia was not involved. I have high respect for Vladimir Putin. I've worked with the Russians. I helped to take down the Soviet Union. I still have a very high respect for the Russians. The Russians did not need to hack into anybody's account. They can hack anything they want. So can the Chinese, but we do too. The real issue at hand is that Hillary failed miserably. And $1 billion.
Doc, I'm sorry to interrupt. The sun's shooting into your camera. It might also damage it. Can you tilt it down so it doesn't burn out?
Yeah, no problem.
Just as we started talking, the sun shot into the lens. Thank you.
Well, that may be too much light on this issue, but the bottom line is, look at what's really happened, Alex. What's really happened subsequently has nothing to do with Hillary and almost nothing to do with Obama. We have been able to place through Trump, Mathis, Secretary of Defense, Michael Flynn, the White House, Kellogg in the White House, Homeland Security, military. Look at all the military positions and imagine what it is I have been saying for years. I want military men or women to get involved in our government, not to start a war, but to basically end this nonsense of alternative narratives which have destroyed our country. 9/11, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, and the rest of the nonsense that was created by the Democratic administration, by Obama, Bush Jr., and the neoconservatives who are trying to get back into government, but we're trying to stop them.
Well, let me stop you because if we have new listeners every second on 30, 40 new affiliates we've got in the last few months. You have laid all this out on your website. You have laid this out for several years. And it's not that we want a military coup. It's that our military is not perfect, but at least it doesn't want to sell us out to the communist Chinese and the globalists. And this project went so far to sell us out that we were down to the country basically being gone. And you said what Trump needs to do and others is bring in people to positions, block the globalists, restore the republic, right the ship. And I know you've been writing articles saying Rex Tillerson is a good choice. I agree. You break down the fact that he's actually bringing in patriots that are anti-globalist, and that he's not bringing in neocons. The one guy at Treasury was at Goldman Sachs, but he was actually an anti-globalist and anti-NAFTA got there. So not everybody at Goldman Sachs is bad is my point.
No, not at all. Goldman Sachs has a diversity of people. I mean, Bannon was at Goldman Sachs. He was at mergers and acquisitions. I had been an investment banker. I took down a major investment banking house that had 600 million, but they did illegal trading. Goldman Sachs has a lot of people, but the issue at hand here is that for the first time, we're bringing in businessmen, military individuals, people who are accountable.
Not just a bunch of lawyers. Exactly what you said we should push for. So let's talk about the real coup that's happened and then get back into Trump, because we're not bragging about this. It organically happened because of the people. It organically happened because the globalists were arrogant and they ignored the new media. I think their hubris is what we can really thank for the victory.
Well, we can thank several things. Let me go over it repeatedly. Number one, you and I, and you have been the voice, have been on the radio and on the alternative media, which really has become the mainstream media. And the media of the New York Times and the other ones can't accommodate to that reality. So they call whatever we do fake news, then they try to hit you. If they try to hit me, there's going to be a bigger problem, because I'm not representing any particular faction other than the fact that I said from day one, We had a false flag. We had an attack against our government. And we've had a president whose background we know nothing about, Obama. I've said that Obama is an American that was not necessarily born here, but clearly his mother was a CIA operative who acted with great distinction, as was his grandparents. But for the most part, after 8 years, we know nothing about Obama. All of that problem has changed now because we're bringing in people who have had to accommodate to standards and accomplishments. Before that, we had a Hillary, had no accomplishments, had 32 years of being close to power, had been collusive, had been corrupt.
Well, let's just say it. We put in the softest, most disconnected group of wannabe elites. Nothing wrong with Ivy League folks. You went to Harvard, MIT, top of your classes. But these people just think going to Harvard, they're magical and better than everybody, and they have a true disdain for America.
Well, the key here isn't that I went to Harvard and MIT. The key was that I was already in the military, and the military sent me to Harvard and MIT.
No, I agree. I'm just saying not everybody's bad, but this core group of elitists are delusional.
Well, the core group of elitists are not only delusional, they are so depressed and angry. What's happening is they're hitting back, and they're not effective. One of the most important things you've done, Alex, and this entire show has done, and then subsequently Trump and family has done, is to make Washington irrelevant. The CIA has become irrelevant. Homeland Security has become irrelevant. All of the issues on the Pentagon, where you have 1 million people in the back office for 1 million soldiers, they are becoming irrelevant. So what Trump is saying, and in effect saying, get out of here, or the notion—
Let's be clear, there's 1 million bureaucrats for 1 million soldiers. There's a bureaucrat for every soldier.
That's correct. That's one back office person for every soldier. Now imagine what a waste of funds that is. It's close to 200 billion or more.
Shouldn't you have 20 soldiers for every bureaucrat?
I don't think so. We have 1 soldier for every bureaucrat, my friend.
No, I know, but I'm saying isn't a better model I've read is 20.
It's what we call a teeth to tail ratio, would be 20 to 30 soldiers for every bureaucrat.
Sure.
But that's not in existence now. That's gone, because most of our fighting components come in from special forces, from SOUTCOM, from a defense intelligence agency. They're highly specialized. The other issue is that we're coming into a cyber war area where, in fact, we don't need all these people in the Pentagon, where we need highly trained specialists who can, in fact—
Sure. Doc, stay there. Stay there. The president's late speaking. We're only going to pop in a little bit, but we're going to go to break, come back, and then I got you off track. Let's get into the counter coup that's happened. They're now striking back. So they already had a coup, counter coup. Now they're attempting another, I guess, coup.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work, Alex. Number one, the Electoral College.
Sure, I understand. But I mean, as you say, they're angry, they're butthurt, they're going to lash out. So what do you expect to happen? And what's the word from the intel community if they try something? I'm told if they try something, it's going to be seen as illegitimate, and they're going to be in big trouble. We'll be back. I'm Alex Jones. Stay with us. Incredible time to be alive, folks. I don't want to be pessimistic, but what are you concerned about? I mean, I think they might try to set off a rogue nuke or something with some criminal group. I think Soros has doubled the amount of money to civil insurrection groups. It appears like they're going to try anything they can to overthrow this attempt to restore the republic.
I don't think Soros can do very much anymore. He's played out his hand with MoveOn.org and all the other issues, and with Jill Stein and Hillary Clinton. The truth of the matter is the entire government has shifted away from its old habits. And what's happening now is we're reconfiguring to be smaller, more effective, and we're concentrating on one issue, and that's jobs. I'm not worried about what the left can or can't do, the liberal media. For the most part, they're finished. They know, and they can't explain, how did Alex Jones create this phenomenon? How did Trump come in without anybody understanding it? So what's happened is an entire new vocabulary where the alternative media becomes the regular media, where binary numbers 1 and 0 can overwhelm a woman who spends $1 billion like Hillary and spends it foolishly on advertising on television. And we have a president who's a businessman. So this revolution is really what the American people want. This is what we need. Their responses are irrelevant. The fact that they talk about the Russians, that's not even relevant. Putin knows that. We know that. Our military is very close to the Russian military. We have all kinds of exchanges in the same way that our military has a very good relationship with the GRU and the FSB and several other areas. And now you have to remember that what Trump has done is literally to put in businessmen into the Treasury. He's put in an amazing businessman into the Secretary of State position, who I think, Tillerson, I've never met the gentleman. I think his profile is perfect. I do thank James Baker, for suggesting him. And I think he should pick his own deputy. This is a man who's run a $400 billion corporation.
Well, he knows world leaders everywhere. They say he's extremely charming, the best salesman ever.
Well, you have to be. If you're going to be head of ExxonMobil, that is America. I mean, one of the things that I think your audience and the people in the United States have to understand is that the business of foreign policy is not policy, it's business. We're out there to create more business for our business.
He's taking us back to what we were. What made us great is commerce.
That's exactly right. When I opened up and I was involved in the disarmament of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, and we put a peace treaty there, which was one of the most significant things under James Baker, we were waiting for the businessmen. And who came in? No one. They came in from Australia. They came in from the Far East to take over Cambodian businesses. However, over time, our American businesses came in. What Tillerson has done is he's been in the forefront of American business, penetrating into Yemen, Chad.
He's been one of the few people actually expanding while everything else is contracting. And we just got some bad news in, but I have to see if this is even true, because the Washington Post now is hoaxing every day. I mean, they're worse than the Onion now, and I mean that literally, with Bezos running it. FBI-backed CIA view that Russia intervened to help Trump. So they've had the head of the FBI come out and say that isn't true. They've had the head of the Justice Department come out and say it. And now FBI Director Comey and National Intelligence Director James Clapper have backed the CIA assessment that Russia intervened in the 2016 election to help Trump. And it doesn't even say really where, but this doesn't even show proof. So they're now reversing themselves. They claim, but I don't even see the proof. Earlier this week, I met separately with Director James Comey and DNI Jim Clapper, and there is strong consensus among us of the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference in our presidential election. CIA Director John O. Brennan said in a message to the agency's workforce, according to U.S. official. So this is a secret message they're saying inside the CIA that contradicts what the head of all intelligence is saying and what the Attorney General is saying and what the FBI had saying. Does that sound credible to you?
What's not credible is, first of all, Obama's finished. He's been finished for the past 6 months or past 2 years. Everything that he's tried to accomplish is finished.
Sure, stay there. Let's talk about that, Doctor. But my point is, talk about a war inside the intelligence agencies, and the stuff that keeps coming out of the Washington Post is secret reports that Congress can't even see. Then the heads of the agency says bull. Pieczenik, try to boil this down as best you can. I'm really concerned. I know you're putting a good face on it, and you believe what you're saying here, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I mean, what do you make of this?
Well, let's go back a while. I've been saying this for several years, that in effect, the people who created political narratives like Obama or Hillary or Bush Jr. that are not consistent with our American values had to pay a price. They have, and now Trump is the leader. Whatever they do is not going to impact on what we're doing right now. The people involved in the release of the WikiLeaks and who were involved in the intelligence community, as Julian Assange said, it was not the Russians, it's not the Chinese. In fact, if we could predict, and you and I could predict this outcome, then it bears fruit.
Well, you said U.S. intelligence was getting ready to do it a year ago.
I said this was going to happen a year ago. So in effect, this is a fact. This is de facto. They can't change anything. If they want to attempt anything, what you're seeing is the squealing and the outcry of dying people. It's like elephants in the graveyard. They're screaming, they're yelling, they're ineffectual, the eunuchs. We've done what we had to do, and no one's going to change that. I can assure you No one will change that. Trump understands it. Our generals understand it. The real intelligence community that's not begotten to John Brennan will understand it. Brennan is finished. The CIA is finished. The Presidential Daily Briefing, which is the PDB, is finished. He doesn't want to read it. He doesn't care about it. And in fact, what we're talking about is the elimination of thousands and thousands of sycophants who've been in the CIA and the military establishment, who were not professionals, who did not go out and have to fight, who were not on the ground providing human. And instead, we're wasting our money on drones. So the reality is we will continue what we have put in place. And I've said this a year ago. I said it 2 years ago. Those who were involved in 9/11, those who were involved in the lies of Sandy Hook, those who were in line with Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Bush Jr., have paid a very heavy price and will continue to pay that price. We have, in effect, won. This revolution, like any revolution, is major, but it has gotten rid of the garbage that we've had in Washington, particularly people who have no jobs, who are politicians, who are lawyers.
Sure. So let me raise this. And by the way, the sun problem on your camera is good now. So thank you for, that's fine now. Expanding on this, Dr. Pieczenik, let me ask you this question. Clearly, they're trying, what would you call it? If they had a coup, we had a counter coup. This is pretty much admitted now. They know U.S. intelligence did it. They're so upset about it that they're trying to blame it on Russia for the optics. They think they're going to win. They're moving forward, but they look really panicked and scared. They're acting scared. They're running scared. Like you said, I agree with you then. How does this play out? I mean, what are the different scenarios? If Obama comes out, he's now like almost 30 minutes behind schedule. If he comes out and says, we're going to look at having new elections to float that trial balloon, what do we do?
We do nothing. Basically, it's not going to let us, it has no credibility. Obama's finished. He knows that. All he's trying to do is write the final chapters for his novel, or as he calls it, the autobiography. He can say whatever he wants. Nobody's going to listen. It's not legitimate. We couldn't care less what Brennan says. We couldn't care less what the CIA says or the FBI. Their credibility has been delegitimized. In fact, the new system, the new government is in waiting, and all it takes us is just a few weeks to stay there and wait. But in fact, the de facto regime is in place. Obama's irrelevant. He has been irrelevant for so many years, I can't even tell you. He's just basically speaking for his last chapter. Brennan is irrelevant. The CIA has become irrelevant. DNI will be knocked down. That's Director of National Intelligence. We don't need it. So in effect, what's happening is Trump is watching this as the elephants are dying, and they're literally dying. The Republicans who weren't with us, the Democrats who weren't with us, they're all finished. And they understand that the lobbying on K Street will also disappear. And a lot of other people will have no jobs. When you have thousands of people at stake, look at all those press people. They're not relevant. What's relevant is you, I, Roger Stone, and millions of others.
That's right. They don't get their vestigial. They don't get, just the technology has moved on past them. We've just entered the vacuum. They don't even, they think if they shut us up, that somehow that will make them relevant again. They're making the same mistake that every other dying old system made.
That's exactly right. Alex, I want you to think for a moment. How can a woman who's supposedly bright, but I've always said she was never very bright, spend $1 billion on TV ads when Trump just simply picked up his iPhone and Twitter? Didn't cost him anything. This is 21st century technology. She couldn't think out of the box. She wasn't creative. Obama couldn't think out of the box. He was not creative. And what you're seeing now is the very essence of American entrepreneurship. By definition, you and I are entrepreneurs. Whatever content we provide, it's the basis of our livelihood. We create a company. We decide whether we
enrich. We produce something.
That's correct. But Obama has produced nothing. The CIA has produced nothing. All they
notice how Trump they're admitting is more presidential in a month of being president-elect and is more commander-in-chief and has already brought back more jobs. I mean he's brought back just $50 billion from Japan, $10 billion in steel, 85% of the carrier jobs, and a bunch of other stuff. Now, IBM says they're moving back. Apple says they're looking at moving back. All these other high-tech companies. And then the union for Obama bitches and says, you didn't bring all of them back to Indiana. And Trump tweets back, well, this is why you lost the jobs to begin with. You ingrate. Then the media bitches and says in the Washington Post, quote, Trump's going to get people killed. He shouldn't hit back when he gets hit.
The point of fact is the media is finished. Bezos is not relevant in the Washington Post. The New York Times is owned by a drug lord from Mexico. I mean, it's a joke. The whole thing is finished. What's relevant is they're going to try to shut you down, but believe me, I've said it for a long time to you and your audience. You're far more important to
Well, let me ask you that question. And I know you have a lot of big sources. I have a lot of high-level sources, probably some of the same people. They say, including a source with Sessions, that they really are kicking around this week a way to go after the free press, the alt-right, with me as a poster boy. That's why they've done a 2-week demonization. But at the last minute, Lynch refused to do it, and others did. So this just shows that, and Lynch last year contemplated censoring the conservative press, which we're not even that. They call us that. So it really shows they've entered a hysteria mode. Don't they understand this destroys them in the view of the world?
No. What happens is their narcissism and their arrogance, as you said, is cocoons their whole idea of who they are and what they are, when in fact they're nobody. They haven't done anything. They haven't produced anything. In 2 weeks, Trump has done more with his Twitter, walking, in fact, to Boeing, telling Boeing, you're going to have to reassign your numbers, telling F-35s at Lockheed Martin, you're going to have to reassign your numbers, than Obama has done in 8 years. So Obama is finished. He's in the
That's right. That's right. For decades, no one would tell them, make this jet better, don't rip us off. So, of course, they ripped us off. And he's just finally acting like we have a consciousness.
That's correct, because he's a businessman. And he understands, like you and I, we produce something, it costs something in turn. Obama's never been a businessman. Hillary Clinton's never been in the business. Bush Jr. hasn't been.
And so they're a bunch of frauds that are scared that a real business person who isn't just a parasite showing up, they're all scared.
Correct. And when you're frightened and you're a eunuch, which is what most of these presidents have been and politicians, they're ineffectual. All they knew was vulnerability and how to pander. That's not the basis of business. But that's why
they sell this fear-based nanny state crap.
That's exactly right. You have the correct speak force, politically correct speak force. You had an Obama whose history is not even known. I mean, this is a joke. And what's happened in that sick joke is that people have died overseas in wars that we didn't want. What was the result? They were unconsciously, they had affected what you and I have done with the military, and that is to put in people who are professionals, who understand the outcome and who understand results. And that's Trump. The civilian Trump understands how important the professional military is and the professional businessman is. Whereas the Obamas and the entire White House, it's pathetic.
Well, sure, but traditionally, any successful country has its intelligence operations by the very best that have already proved themselves in the military, or at least in business or medicine. You never brought in the spoiled princes and people, to actually be part of anything if they hadn't already proven themselves. Instead, we bypassed that selection process and just put a bunch of spoiled brats in who innately don't like real men and real producers and have a score to settle, so they try to extinct the non-eunuchs who they're in competition with, mounting the head of the very country that gives them the power on the wall because of their subconscious fears of it.
Well, let me put it, I think it's a brilliant analysis. You're a psychiatrist, but basically what these people are self-destructive. From the very beginning, when Bush opened up his mouth, when Bill Clinton started off with his nonsense, and then
I'm sorry to interrupt. The president is Obama, 44, is talking about Russia. Let's go to it now. A quick response to this, Dr. Pieczenik. What do you make of this Office of Thought Crimes, this free speech police, this Office of Speech that they're setting up in the State Department, obviously with the CIA, with 160+ million, admittedly to go out and engage in disinformation operations? I mean, obviously, Trump's got to veto that immediately. This is, but I almost welcome it. Once we have open state-run media, this is just ridiculous.
Well, number one, you're not going to see any more press in the White House. I predict that Trump will get rid of all that nonsense. Number two, this is the end of Obama. This is how he started, just empty air discussions. In a way, what's interesting is Obama is talking about a operative who became the leader of a country. Now, I happen to know that Obama was an operative in the CIA, not an effective one, but somebody who did work in the CIA, and he's working against Putin, who worked in the KGB and then basically led a country into a very effective presence. Obama has led this country into a disaster. So what you're seeing is the counterpart of Russian effectiveness, Russian aggression, Russian leadership versus a pathetic individual who was co-opted by the CIA, whose parents happen to be very good CIA operatives, but who's a total product of John Brennan and Tenet and the CIA groupthink that has always been a problem for people like myself, for the military, and those who affect real change.
All right, we're going to come back to that in a moment. He's talking about victims in America of the Russian hacking. Nothing about China or Saudi Arabia. Let me ask you this briefly, Dr. Pieczenik. Don't you think Trump should come out and say, look, the Chinese and the Saudis in newspapers bragged they were giving massive money to Hillary, 20% of her funding from the Saudis alone. That's foreign interference with them bragging. So until you investigate that, stop only looking at this. This is a load of horse crap.
Well, you know, Trump is now riding above the crest. He doesn't need to respond to anything right now because what he's absorbing is very simply that he's laughing his way into success or to the bank in the same way that Michael Flynn is, the same way James.
No, sure, they're all very, very confident, but their surrogates need to point out that we, the people, took the country back despite foreign manipulation that was public, and so we won. I got to hand it to you. You talked about the de-evolution of power back in the States 6 years ago on the show, 5 years ago. You talked about this whole model the EU would fall. You really had the most optimistic view, and I quite frankly thought it was too optimistic. I got to say, 6 years later, you really are one of the most visionary people we interview, so hats off to you.
Well, it's a pleasure, Alex. Without you and your audience in this wonderful country, you know, we weren't able to affect what we could. Let me say one thing. I'm going to wish everybody a good Christmas, not just good holiday, but a good Christmas. And please understand that our country is very strong. The dollar has gone up. The stock markets will continue. With the appearance of Trump and the people he's put in, the world understands one thing. We're coming back to be the major power. Russia's not an issue. China's
Hold on. Obama's getting into fake news. Stay there. All hell's breaking loose. Back it up. I mean, I know it's a live press conference. This is crazy. Stay with us, Dr. Pieczenik. Stay with us, audience. 4th hour, Infowars.com. Looking at this, what looks like just mishmash hysteria, this looks like panic. I talked to a high-level contractor and some other folks, you know, obviously people in the private agencies that you know, things like Booz Allen, people that fuse the info, and they're saying that it's just that total hysteria, a bunch of leftists running in different directions, you know, like a hair on fire fire drill, not knowing what they're doing. I mean, you think that's an accurate statement?
I think it's very accurate. What you're seeing now is basically the president, Obama, really very frightened of what Trump can do. The legacy that the president has is being destroyed. Osama bin Laden was not killed. Michael Flynn made a point of that. That was absolute nonsense. I've said it for years. His Obamacare is going down in flames, and we have a surgeon now in charge of health and human services, and we have a surgeon now in charge of HUD. Now we have professionals. Obama can't handle this. The liberals can't handle it, and the media has nowhere to go. They can't rationalize how does a man in a studio who started with nothing 15 years ago or 20 years ago, i.e. Alex Jones, get so much power and influence when they, in turn, seem to have none. And CNN has none. MSNBC has none. Now I understand Fox News is going after you. That's absurd. That's absolutely absurd. You have to be stupid if you want to go after Alex Jones. The major turning point, and I said it on your show months ago, what happened to the defeat and self-destruction of Hillary Clinton was when she pointed out to Alex Jones' show and blamed you for the false narratives that we created, that Sandy Hook wasn't real, that the 9/11 wasn't real. And in fact, what she did was to corroborate the very fact that all Americans knew 9/11.
Sure, so they didn't feel alone. So let me ask you this question in closing. And again, I'm just a bellwether. It's not that I'm that good. It's that they're that weak. Let me ask you this question. Do you think they'll be successful openly announcing they want censorship and want George Soros and a group he runs, as Facebook has announced, to certify what websites you can visit and what you can't? This is incredible arrogance.
No, there's no way that's going to happen. Number one, no matter what Soros thinks or no matter what Zuckerberg thinks, still, please remember that the internet was created by DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. The key word there is defense. It's not CIA. It's not civilian. I warn the left again. If you do not understand what I'm saying, DARPA developed the internet. DARPA developed social media. I was trained in that in '73. Trump was trained in that in the 2000s. And so we are using simply the methods and sources that were created by the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. The CIA did not create anything. Homeland Security did not create anything. DNI.
And is it a design that when you try to shut it down, it makes it sprout into something new?
Well, when you try to shut it down, you're going to get something new. And I can guarantee you, you will not be shut down. You have been such an important voice to American freedom and to those who serve in our country, literally serve overseas and domestically. There is no way that the President of the United States or the wannabe President Hillary can shut you down. If they try, the consequences will be very serious to them, and I will not specify.
All right, that's what I've been told by others.